He already knows you are gone. And that terrifies him more than losing you ever did. Because the moment he realizes you will never come back, something happens behind closed doors that he will never let you see. Something quiet, something calculated, something almost nobody talks about. Stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I am about to describe is not guesswork. It is a pattern, a predictable, almost mechanical pattern that shows up again and again in people who have narcissistic traits once they understand that the door is truly closed. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why his silence, his sudden calm, or his strange new relationship is not peace. It is panic wearing a mask. If you have ever walked away from someone like this and wondered why they seemed almost unaffected or why they moved on so fast, it made you question your own sanity, you need to hear this. Because what looks like indifference on the outside is very rarely what is happening on the inside. Before we go further, drop the word mirror in the comments if you have ever felt like you were dating your own reflection instead of a real person. That one word tells me you already know exactly what I am talking about, and it helps this video reach someone else who needs to hear it today. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe because we talk about narcissistic patterns, emotional manipulation, and real recovery every single week, and you do not want to miss what comes next. Now let's get into it. When a narcissist realizes that you are truly gone, and I mean truly gone, not just angry, not just taking space, but finished, something inside their internal system breaks, not their heart, their supply line. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else in this conversation. See, a person with narcissistic traits does not experience loss the way most people do. Most of us grieve a relationship because we miss the connection, the shared history, the version of love we believed we had. A narcissist grieves something else entirely. They grieve the loss of an audience. They grieve the loss of control. They grieve the loss of a source that used to reflect back exactly what they needed to feel: powerful, admired, important, or in charge. So when you finally leave, and you mean it this time, they are not sitting somewhere quietly heartbroken the way you might imagine. What is actually happening is far stranger and far more revealing. The first thing that happens almost immediately is a private audit. Not an apology, not reflection, an audit. They start replaying the relationship in their head, but not to understand what they did wrong. They replay it to figure out what went wrong with their strategy. Where did the control slip? Where did the story stop working? Where did you stop believing the version of them they were selling you? This is not remorse. This is damage control for their own ego. And here is where it gets uncomfortable, because while you are healing, journaling, maybe crying in your car, maybe finally sleeping through the night for the first time in months, they are doing something you would never expect. They are researching you quietly, obsessively, not because they miss you, because they need to know if their narrative is still intact. They will check your social media at strange hours. They will look for signs that you are struggling, because struggling means you still need them, even silently. And if they see you thriving instead, posting something confident, looking lighter, looking free, that image can hit them harder than any argument you ever had while you were together. Why? Because your happiness without them proves the one thing their entire identity cannot survive: that they were replaceable, that you did not need their version of reality to be okay. Type replaceable in the comments if that word just hit different, because a lot of people underestimate how much power that single realization holds over a narcissist's self-image. Now, here is something almost nobody explains clearly enough. When a narcissist knows you are truly gone, they do not usually escalate outward drama first. That instinct often comes later, if it comes at all. What comes first is something quieter and honestly a little eerie. They start constructing a new story. not for you, for themselves, and often for anyone who will listen. This is where the narrative rewriting begins. In their retelling, you become distant, you become cold, you become the one who changed, who stopped trying, who became impossible to please. Meanwhile, they become the patient one, the misunderstood one, the person who gave everything to someone who simply could not appreciate it. This is not lying in the way most people lie. This is self-protection dressed up as memory. Because admitting the truth that they manipulated, minimized, or mistreated you would mean confronting something about themselves they are not equipped to face. So instead, the story gets rewritten in real time. And it gets rewritten convincingly enough that even people close to them start to believe it. If you have ever heard from mutual friends or family a completely unrecognizable version of your relationship, this is exactly why. It is not because they remember it differently. It is because they need a version that keeps their ego standing upright. Let's pause here for a second because this next part is important, and I want you to really sit with it. When someone knows deep down that you are never coming back, one of the most common things they secretly do is search for a replacement supply, and they often do it faster than feels emotionally possible from the outside. This confuses so many people. They think, how can someone move on this quickly if they truly loved me? Here's the honest answer. Love, in the way you understand it, connection, vulnerability, mutual respect, was never the primary currency in that relationship. Attention was, admiration was, control was, and when one source of that currency disappears, the instinct is not to sit in grief and process loss the way emotionally secure people do. The instinct is to refill the tank as quickly as possible because an empty tank feels unbearable to someone whose entire sense of self depends on external validation. This is why you might see them in a new relationship shockingly fast. This is why that new relationship might look, from the outside, disturbingly similar to yours in the beginning. Same intensity, same rapid declarations of love, same love bombing, because the pattern is not personal to you specifically. The pattern is the operating system. Comment the word pattern below if you are starting to see how none of this was ever really about you as an individual. It was about a role you were placed into. Now let's talk about something darker, something that a lot of people experience but rarely have language for. When a narcissist accepts, somewhere deep down, that you will not be coming back, many of them secretly begin monitoring your support system. Not obviously, subtly, they may reach out to your friends under the guise of concern. They may casually mention you to mutual acquaintances, testing the emotional temperature. They may even befriend people close to you, not out of genuine interest, but to maintain a thread of access, a way of staying informed, a way of feeling like they still have some invisible string attached to your life. This is sometimes called maintaining supply lines, and it can look almost like detective work if you ever saw it laid out plainly. Who is she talking to now? Who does he still follow online? Has anyone mentioned my name? It is exhausting to even imagine, but for someone whose self-worth is built on external reflection, losing access to information about you can feel like losing a part of their own identity. If you have ever felt like your ex was suspiciously well informed about your life, even though you barely speak, this is often why. It is rarely a coincidence. Let's talk about the mask for a moment, because this concept explains almost everything else in this video. Psychologically, many people with narcissistic traits maintain what feels like a curated persona, a mask that presents confidence, charm, and stability to the outside world. That mask requires constant maintenance, and one of its biggest threats is public failure, especially the public failure of being left. So when they know you are truly gone, a strange contradiction happens. Publicly, they often become more polished, more social, more visible, almost performing wellness for an audience. But privately, in unguarded moments, cracks appear. Sudden irritability, trouble sleeping, obsessive thinking, a short temper with people who have nothing to do with the breakup. This is the mask working overtime. Because if the mask slips in public, if people around them start to suspect that they are struggling, insecure, or emotionally shaken by being left, that threatens the entire persona they have spent years constructing. So the performance intensifies exactly when the internal experience destabilizes. This is why you might hear that they seem totally fine from mutual friends, while somehow also hearing through a different source that they have been unusually erratic behind the scenes. Both things can be true at once. That is not a contradiction. That is the mask doing its job. If this is resonating with you right now, comment the word mask so I know to keep going deeper into this, because there is a lot more most people never hear explained this clearly. Now, here is something that catches a lot of people off guard: hoovering. Even when someone knows on some level that you are genuinely done, many will still attempt at least one hoovering attempt named after the vacuum brand because the intention is to suck you back in. This might not happen right away. It might happen weeks or months later, often timed suspiciously close to something significant in your life: a new relationship, a promotion, a birthday, a moment when you seem particularly stable, happy, or visible. The message might look harmless on the surface. A simple, "I saw this and thought of you." A "hope you're doing well." A sudden, seemingly random apology for something small while conveniently avoiding the larger pattern of harm. Here is the important part. This is rarely about reconciliation in the way you might hope. It is often a test to see if the emotional hook still works, a test to see if, underneath your new confidence, there is still a thread they can pull. If you have ever received a message like this and felt your stomach drop, not because you wanted them back, but because some old wound got poked, that reaction makes complete sense. It does not mean you are weak. It means you are human, and the manipulation was designed, whether consciously or not, to target exactly that response. Let's shift gears for a second because I want to talk about something even less discussed: grief. Except not the kind of grief you might expect. When someone with narcissistic traits truly loses access to their source of supply, meaning you, and truly cannot get it back, some of them do experience a form of grief. But researchers and clinicians who study this pattern describe it as something closer to mourning a function rather than mourning a person. They are not grieving you specifically as a whole human being with your own thoughts, needs, and inner world. They are grieving the loss of the role you played: the audience member, the validator, the person who made them feel powerful, important, desired, or in control. This is an uncomfortable truth, but an important one, because it explains why their grief, if it exists at all, often looks strange from the outside. It might show up as anger rather than sadness. It might show up as obsession rather than longing. It might show up as an urgent need to prove they are fine rather than any real acknowledgement of loss. If their grief looked like genuine self-reflection, genuine accountability, genuine change, that would actually be a hopeful sign. But that is rarely what shows up, because true accountability requires a level of vulnerability that conflicts directly with the defense mechanisms holding the entire persona together. Now let's talk about something people almost never expect. Sometimes when a narcissist realizes you are truly gone, they secretly begin idealizing you, not the real you. A version of you frozen in time, usually from the early days of the relationship, back when everything felt exciting and new and full of potential. This idealized version becomes almost mythical in their mind. The perfect partner who got away, the one who really understood them. This is not love in the way you might hope it means. It is often closely tied to their own self-image. Because losing the perfect one is far less threatening to their ego than admitting they lost someone due to their own behavior. This is why some people report being idealized publicly by an ex long after the relationship ended, spoken about almost reverently, while privately, during the relationship, they were criticized, dismissed, or made to feel inadequate constantly. The idealization is not really about you. It is about preserving a story where the loss makes sense without requiring any uncomfortable self examination. If any of this is making you feel a little unsettled in a good way, like pieces are finally clicking into place, comment the word clicking below, because that reaction usually means you are finally seeing the full picture instead of just the fragments they allowed you to see. Let's talk about something a little more practical now. The smear campaign. Not everyone experiences a full-blown smear campaign, but many people do, especially when the narcissist senses that you are not coming back and that their control over the narrative is genuinely at risk. This can look like subtle comments to mutual friends. It can look like a full reputation management project, casting you as unstable, difficult, cold, or dramatic. Sometimes it looks like reaching out to people you have not spoken to in years, almost as if laying groundwork, almost as if building a case. Here is the key thing to understand. This is rarely random. It is protective. If people around them believe the breakup was your fault or your flaw, then the narcissist's identity as the reasonable, wronged, or misunderstood party stays intact. Truth is not really the goal here. Narrative control is. If you have ever discovered that people you thought knew you were suddenly treating you differently without a clear reason, and later found out an ex had been quietly concerned about you behind your back, this is often exactly what was happening. Now, here is something that might surprise you, especially if you are early in your healing journey. Many people with narcissistic traits secretly struggle with a very specific kind of shame after being truly left. A shame that has almost nothing to do with the loss of you as a person, and almost everything to do with what your leaving represents. It represents proof, undeniable proof, that they are not as irresistible, as important, or as in control as their identity requires them to believe. This shame rarely gets expressed directly. It usually gets converted into something else entirely: anger, denial, overcompensation, a sudden, aggressive pursuit of success, status, or new romantic conquests, almost like proving something to an invisible audience. This is sometimes described as narcissistic injury, and it can be one of the most volatile emotional states a person like this experiences because it threatens the very foundation of how they see themselves. This is also, unfortunately, when some of the more dangerous behaviors can emerge, including escalated attempts at control, manipulation, or even retaliation. If you are navigating a situation where you sense this kind of injury happening in someone who has shown a pattern of controlling or abusive behavior, please prioritize your safety first. Trust your instincts. Reach out to trusted people in your life or professional support if things ever feel unsafe. Let's bring this back to you for a moment, because ultimately, this video is not really about understanding them more deeply. It is about understanding yourself more clearly. If you recognize these patterns, whether you are still in the relationship, freshly out of it, or years removed, and finally putting language to something that confused you for so long, please hear this clearly. None of this was ever a reflection of your worth. You were not too sensitive. You were not too much. You were not the reason things fell apart. You were simply someone who eventually stopped playing a role that was never fair to you in the first place. The confusion you may have felt, the way you sometimes questioned your own memory, your own perception, your own sanity, that has a name too. Many people describe it as a kind of chronic self-doubt created by inconsistent, manipulative, or invalidating treatment over time. It is not a personal weakness. It is a completely understandable response to being placed in an environment where reality was constantly being rewritten around you. Healing from this does not usually happen in one dramatic moment. It happens slowly, in small acts of reclaiming your own perception, trusting your own memory again, trusting your own instincts again, learning to sit with silence instead of needing constant reassurance, learning that peace, real peace, often feels boring and steady compared to the chaotic highs and lows you may have gotten used to. If you are in the middle of that process right now, I want you to know something important. The fact that they seem fine, or moved on fast, or found someone new, or built a new public image, none of that erases what happened. None of that means you imagined it. None of that means you were wrong to leave. Comment the word steady below if you are working on choosing peace over chaos right now, even when it feels unfamiliar, because that single choice is often the real turning point in this entire journey. Let's talk a little more about what actually happens behind the scenes, because there is one more layer to this that most people never hear about. Many narcissists, once they accept, even quietly, that a person is truly gone for good, begin what could be called a private inventory of blame. This is different from the public narrative we already discussed. This inventory is internal, and in it, almost every failure gets redirected outward. Your leaving becomes proof that you were unstable, or ungrateful, or simply incapable of appreciating what they offered. Rarely, if ever, does the inventory include genuine self-examination. This might sound harsh, but understanding it can actually be incredibly freeing. Because if you are waiting, even quietly, even secretly, for them to eventually realize what they lost, to have some big moment of clarity where they finally understand your worth and come back transformed, that moment, statistically and psychologically, is exceptionally rare. Real change requires real accountability, and real accountability requires a level of internal vulnerability that conflicts with the very defense mechanisms that created the harmful patterns in the first place. This does not mean change is impossible for every single person who has ever displayed narcissistic traits. But it does mean that hoping for that transformation, especially as the reason to stay hopeful about a reunion, is often a setup for continued pain rather than a realistic path forward. Now let's talk about something a little lighter, because healing deserves some hope too. Many people who have gone through exactly what we are describing today eventually reach a point where the silence stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like peace, where a message from that person stops feeling like validation and starts feeling like static background noise from a chapter that has already closed, where the idea of them moving on quickly stops feeling like proof of your unworthiness and starts feeling like confirmation that you were simply never meant to stay in that story. That shift is possible. It is not immediate and it is not linear, but it is absolutely possible. And countless people who have walked this exact path are living proof of it. If you are somewhere in the middle of that shift right now, comment the word healing below, because I want to see how many of you are actively doing this work. And it might help someone else scrolling through these comments feel a lot less alone tonight. Before we wrap up, let's do one more mid-video check-in, because this next part matters. If any part of this video described your relationship with unsettling accuracy, please take a moment right now to comment the word recognize below. Not for engagement, for you. Naming a pattern out loud, even in a simple comment, is often one of the first real steps toward breaking free from the confusion these dynamics create. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do, because we cover recovery, boundaries, and psychological safety every single week. And this community is genuinely here to support you through it. Let's finish with the most important truth in this entire video. When a narcissist knows Deep down, that you will never come back, the secret things they do, the private audits, the narrative rewriting, the replacement seeking, the monitoring, the idealizing, the smearing, the shame turned outward. None of that is about love. It never was. It is about control, image, and survival of an identity built on external validation rather than internal security. You, on the other hand, are not required to build your worth on any of that. Your value was never dependent on their approval, their attention, or their version of events. It never needed their permission to be real. If you take one thing from this video, let it be this: their silence is not power. Their new relationship is not proof. Their curated image is not the full story. And your decision to walk away and stay away was not weakness. It was clarity. You saw something true, and instead of staying comfortable in confusion, you chose to trust yourself. That choice, more than anything they will ever secretly do behind closed doors, is what real strength actually looks like. If this video helped you understand something you have been quietly carrying for a long time, let me know by commenting the word "understood" below. It genuinely helps this reach someone else who needs it. Maybe someone who is scrolling right now, feeling exactly what you used to feel, wondering if any of it was real. It was real. Your experience was real. Your instincts were right. And you are allowed to keep choosing yourself, one quiet, steady day at a time. Thank you for watching all the way through. If you found value in this, subscribe for more videos like this every week, and I will see you in the next one.